Before this story begins, let me introduce myself to anyone watching because you deserve to know who is speaking to you and why my voice matters today. My name is Mariah, and what you are about to hear is the most painful chapter of my life, a chapter that changed everything on the day I stood in a courtroom fighting for the right to stay with my daughter. If you are new to this channel, please tap the subscribe button so this platform can grow and continue bringing you real stories that speak to the heart. Now let me take you back to the moment when everything around me began to fall apart. It started on a cold gray morning when my husband Raiden dragged me into court accusing me of betrayal, failure, and emotional harm. He stood tall and confident as if he had already won, while I sat trembling and holding on to the hope that truth would still matter. My heart was beating so hard that my hands shook every time I tried to breathe. I kept wondering how a man I once loved could twist my reality and turn my own child into a trophy. He planned to win, not a life he planned to protect. I had no support, no lawyer, and no one to speak for me. I was alone, or at least I believed I was, until my daughter took her first brave step. The courtroom felt colder than any winter morning I had ever known, and every sound echoed sharply against the walls like splinters piercing my skin. I kept my eyes on the floor because if I looked at Raiden, I feared I would break apart in front of everyone. I heard him telling the judge that I was unstable, that I was an irresponsible wife, that I could not offer a safe home for our daughter. He said it all with a steady voice as if he had rehearsed every line for weeks. I felt each word hit me like a stone because nothing he said was true, yet he spoke with confidence while my voice felt trapped inside my throat. I could sense people judging me with their eyes, even though they did not know me. I wanted to scream that I had given everything to my marriage and my child, that I had endured nights filled with tears, that I had stayed silent just to keep peace inside a home that was slowly destroying me. I felt so small, so fragile, so close to shattering. But then I saw my daughter sitting at the end of the wooden bench, her feet not reaching the floor, her hands pressed tightly together like she was holding a secret that weighed more than she could carry. Hope looked at me with eyes that carried worry far beyond her young age, and something in her expression told me she knew more than I thought. She kept glancing toward the judge like she wanted to speak but feared that someone might stop her. I wanted to reach out and hold her, but we were separated by rules, by walls, and by the emotional battlefield her father had created. The judge asked me if I wanted to defend myself, and I opened my mouth, but the words would not come out. All I could think about was how Raiden had spent months preparing this narrative, building stories, twisting moments, and turning ordinary disagreements into exaggerated claims. He knew I had no lawyer and no money to hire one. He knew I would be overwhelmed, and he counted on that weakness. The silence stretched too long, and I saw the judge writing something on the file in front of him. Hope's fingers tightened around a small pink object I had not noticed before. It looked like an envelope with glitter on the edges, and she held it as if it were something sacred. I had no idea what it was, but she kept touching it gently like it carried the truth I had forgotten how to speak. Raiden continued speaking with fake calmness, telling the judge that he wanted full custody so our daughter could grow up in a stable environment. He said I had emotional episodes, and that I created tension inside the home. He even lifted his hand to his forehead, pretending to wipe invisible stress like he had been suffering for years. I wanted to stand up and shout that he was the one who brought fear into our home, that he was the one who yelled at me late at night, that he was the one who left me feeling like a ghost walking through my own life. While he kept speaking, Hope slowly slid off the bench and stepped forward. Her small shoes made soft tapping sounds on the wooden floor, but they echoed in my chest like thunder. She walked past her father without a second glance and stood in front of the judge. The entire room went quiet. I held my breath. The judge leaned forward and asked her gently what she needed. Hope lifted her small hands and pointed to the stack of files on the judge's desk. Her voice shook, but she was brave enough to speak. Hope said, "Your Honor, I put something under your papers, and I think you need to see it because nobody here is telling the truth." Her voice carried a strength I had not expected from an 8-year-old. The judge looked confused at first, then he lifted the stack of documents, and there it was, the same pink envelope she had been holding earlier. He opened it carefully as if he sensed the weight of what might be inside. I watched with my heart pounding as he unfolded a sheet of paper covered in my daughter's handwriting in bright crayon letters. She had written a message that would break every wall inside that courtroom. The judge began reading it quietly, but his expression changed with every line. His eyebrows lowered, then lifted slightly, then tightened with concern. The silence in the room felt alive, breathing, moving, pressing on all of us. Raiden shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Hope looked at me with eyes full of fear and courage, and I realized that had carried this secret for far too long. The judge finally lifted his eyes from the letter and asked Hope if she wrote every word herself, and she nodded with a small brave movement that carried more honesty than anything spoken in that room that day. He cleared his throat and read aloud so every person present could hear the truth my daughter had hidden inside those bright crayon lines. She had written that I cried alone in the bathroom every night because Raiden yelled at me and blamed me for everything, even things that never happened. She wrote that she heard him telling me that I was worthless and weak, and that I should be grateful he stayed. She wrote that she was scared whenever he raised his voice, and that she wanted to sleep in my room because she did not feel safe around him when he was angry. Each word felt like a knife, but not against me. Instead, it cut through the lies Raiden had wrapped around the court. Raiden stood frozen, his jaw twitching as if he wanted to speak, but the judge held up his hand to silence him. Hope took a small step toward me, and I could see she was trying not to cry. Her hand shook slightly, and I wanted to run to her, but I stayed still, waiting for the judge to react, hoping the truth would finally matter. The judge leaned back in his chair and looked at Raiden with an expression that made the entire courtroom shift in tension. Each second stretched like an hour as we waited for him to speak. He finally said that the letter was deeply concerning, and that the emotional condition of the child appeared to contradict every accusation Raiden had made. He turned to me and asked if what Hope described was true, and I felt tears burning the edges of my eyes, but I held them back as I nodded slowly because I could no longer hide from the truth. Raiden suddenly tried to defend himself, raising his hands and saying that Hope was too young and might be imagining things, but Hope stepped forward again and told the judge that she wrote everything on her own, and that nobody told her what to say. Her voice trembled, but she did not back down. She said she wanted the judge to know that I was a good mother, and that I protected her even when I could not protect myself. The entire room fell into a heavy stillness. Raiden looked around desperately as if he needed someone to believe him, but nobody moved. Hope's bravery lit a fire inside me, and for the first time that day I felt strength rising in my chest. The judge asked Hope to return to her seat, and she walked back with slow, careful steps, but her eyes stayed on me like she was silently saying that everything would be all right. He then asked Raiden if there was any evidence supporting his claims, and Raiden began stumbling through excuses, saying that I was emotional and difficult to live with, but every sentence sounded weaker than the last. He tried to shift blame, claiming he only wanted a peaceful home, yet the judge had already witnessed the truth written by the one person who had no reason to lie. Raiden's tone began cracking under pressure as the judge asked him why his daughter felt unsafe and why she believed he harmed me. Raiden could not answer. I watched him lose the confidence he had earlier, as if the mask he wore for the world was falling apart piece by piece. My heartbeat steadied for the first time since I entered the courtroom. The judge set Raiden's paperwork aside and said that the court would now consider the emotional well-being of the child above all else. Hope lifted her head slightly as if she understood how important those words were, and I felt hope returning to me in a way I had not felt in years. The judge took a long, thoughtful breath, then announced that temporary custody would be granted to me until a deeper evaluation could be completed. He said the environment described in Hope's letter indicated emotional instability within the father's household, and therefore the child's safety and comfort had to be prioritized. Raiden tried to object, raising his voice and insisting that the letter was a manipulation, but the judge stood firm and warned him to control his tone or he would be removed from the courtroom. Hope turned toward me with eyes wide and shining like she could finally breathe again. I felt something inside me loosen, something that had been locked for years. The judge ordered supervised visits only and required Raiden to undergo counseling and behavioral assessment before any further decisions could be made. Raiden looked furious yet helpless, and for the first time, he seemed smaller, not physically but in the way truth shrunk. The illusion he had depended on, the courtroom, felt lighter, even though the battle was not fully over, but for that moment justice was leaning in the direction of truth. As the judge dismissed the hearing, Hope ran straight to me and wrapped her arms around my waist with a trembling grip that spoke louder than any word she could ever say. I held her tightly, feeling the warmth of her small hands and the strength she carried into that courtroom when I thought I had none. We walked out together into the hallway where the air felt different, almost like the world had shifted in our favor. I knelt down to look into her eyes, and she whispered that she had written the letter because she did not want to lose me, and because she believed grown-ups should know what really happens behind closed doors. I felt tears sliding down my cheeks, not from pain but from a fierce gratitude that my daughter had saved us both. With a single act of courage, she became my voice when I could not speak, and she became the reason I knew our future would be filled with healing instead of fear. As we left the building hand in hand, I realized that strength does not always roar. Sometimes it speaks softly, in the shape of a child holding a pink envelope filled with truth. This story is the journey of a mother who walked into a courtroom believing she was completely alone, yet discovered that the smallest voice in the room carried the greatest truth. My daughter Hope revealed the pain we both lived through in a pink letter hidden under the judge's files, and her bravery exposed the reality her father tried so hard to hide. She showed the world that love can overcome fear, and that truth always finds a way to rise no matter how deeply someone tries to bury it. This story teaches that strength is not measured by perfection, but by the courage to stand up when your soul feels broken, and by the willingness to protect the ones you love, even when your own heart is shaking. My message to anyone who is listening is this: never underestimate the power of a child who knows the truth, and never doubt the quiet strength inside you. Because sometimes the moment you feel the weakest is the moment you are standing right at the edge of the victory that will change your life forever.